Okay, good morning, everyone. Evening, afternoon, wherever you are. It's Lawrence here, Roman Mosaic Workshops, and coming on as scheduled, just slightly behind time. And this is going over a bit more about the plans for sort of next year and specifically what we're going to do, plus the new course on geometric strand patterns. So, as I say, next year we'll be going over looking more at the geometry in Roman mosaics, setting out whether it's a decorative mosaic, whether you're doing the mosaic at home, whether you're doing it just for interest, or whether you're doing it as a profession. And one of the first things we're going to be going over is identifying the patterns before we go into looking at how we make them as mosaics. So say there is a course coming out. I'll give you some information in a little while about how you can get a free copy of the manual to enter the competition. So let's just have a look at what we've got. And let me just check that I'm going live there, because it's not been unknown to sit here chatting up. Yeah, I can see myself there. Okay. So let's just share the screen. Okay, these are the three elements which really are going to be going over, which really going to be encompassing all of next year, and how we approach patterns, geometric ones. We're starting off with the strand ones simply because they're the easiest. Let me just first show you what I mean about a strand pattern. So as you can see here, this is a Solomon's knot. Focus in on that. Yeah, there. One of the most basic motifs in strand motifs in a mosaic. Now, what we mean by strand is, as you can see here, if I keep the damn thing still, there, a strand is two lines of black, or a line of black either side of some lines of color, or it might even be just pure white. But as you can see there, the strand creates a sort of band, and in these types of mosaics, they're more of a sort of like a plait pattern there. But when we talk about a strand pattern, that's what we're talking about. So let's just go back to there. And so you see, the first step is to be able to identify them. Now, I'd love to tell you there's some real esoteric art to it, but it's actually very straightforward. The method that I've used to really break them down, because it's a big myth when you go into these that you do actually need to have this skill in geometry, which you don't. I have a book somewhere on the bookshelf there about geometric patterns and how to use a compass properly, and I've sort of started it but never really got into it. So the reason for that is that I don't emphasize it, not just because I'm lazy, but also because, practically speaking, you look at the Roman mosaics, they would have had someone with an understanding of geometry to be able to start off, but doing the actual mosaics, they wouldn't have used that. They wouldn't have had to use that, generally speaking. I mean, you see different standards of work, but overall, they were slaves, freedmen. They wouldn't have had the level of education that we were, particularly if they were doing it. So, good morning from Florida. Thanks very much. So you've got to really simplify stuff. You've got to put yourself in their position. What works? What can you use? And this is what I found, that when I started looking at these patterns, working them out, I made it really complicated. Because I thought I had to, because it was like geometry. I mean, I did technical drawing at school, and I didn't really pick it up. I mean, it got to the point where if I needed to draw a circle, I would find something that was round and draw around that while the teacher wasn't looking. If I needed an angle, I would do something that looked approximately like the angle that we needed. That was as far as get. And so I never really learned to do it properly. And when I tried to, when I was looking at these geometric patterns, I just couldn't get it. Yes, it can help. But also, we go through on the third stage, you'll see why sometimes it can be a bit of a hindrance to you. So don't think you have to have skills in geometry. You have to be able to look, assess, and just go with the simplest way. Break things down. Learn to do anything. Once you've learned to do it, or learn to an acceptable level, start breaking it down, start to simplify it, and keep simplifying it, keep taking things away until there is no more to take away, and then you're left with a method you can use, the method that's going to be the fastest, the easier to use. So it crack on. Strand, mosaic. So we are talking about these types of things. Oh, get that in focus. I will get the graphics done. That's your sort of strand mosaic. So you see any of those mosaics, very easy thing to do is you need this. 4 lines, and it's all exactly the same. This is what I use every time. It doesn't matter how complex it is. A vertical line, a horizontal line, 2 diagonal lines. And that's all you need to do. Okay. When I was drawing this out, to get the lines correct, I used a post-it note. To get the right angle correct, I used the edge of the post-it note. Then I folded it over, folded the note diagonally. There's my 45-degree line. Okay, so just use the stuff around you. That's all you need. But you want to draw this out, and this is going to be your template for all of them. So we have Solomon's knot. Let's get that on there. Now, can you see there? Solomon's knot, and it has, let me move out the way so we can get this in there. Now, you can see that the single white center tesserae, the main points of the pattern, see where they fall on the lines? Let's take another example. This one is a half-drawn one. So this is Solomon's knot with an interwoven square. Now, can you see on there? Get that in focus. Right. Now, can you see that? You see the points that go on there, just on those lines. And also look for the square. Can you see where that actually turns on the diagonal lines? Let's try this with border pattern. It's a triple strand. We know it's a triple strand because there are 2 single white tesserae on a diagonal line. Add 1, 3. It's a triple strand. Now, what I'm going to do with this is just put that on one of them. Now, can you see how the lines go through certain areas, go through certain points? Now, that star guide will go on all of them, can go on every single one, but you can see that vertical line going through the whole of the single white center tesserae, which will be the outside line of there, and you can see where the diagonal lines cut through the others, even on the corners as well. So really that that's it. Once you start to break down, the manual's going to go through how to use that on the more complex structures, but that's it. You can start using that now. You get your sheet of paper, you draw your 4 lines on it, sheet of tracing paper, and put it over the mosaics, over the patterns. Take note of what falls on those lines and what you can see on there. If it's a borderline, you're going to be using that star along the individual points of the mosaic. So now that is geometry. Let's go back to here. Right, so identifying the patterns. That is part of the process of identifying the patterns, using that star pattern, the 4 lines over the top. Then there are certain things you look at fall on those lines. That's the first one. This first of the workshops in January, the seminar day, will be going over a lot of this, identifying the patterns and how you can use them. Second stage is drawing using the geometry. Now, this, as I say, this is, don't get put off by the geometry bit. You can use just as much as you need to for that. So what you do is, this is about, if you're just drawing the patterns, you can still do the mosaic from them, and you'll understand why I'm a bit hesitant when we get on to the third one. So you're using geometry, circles, triangles, squares, keeping it really simple, to break down the pattern and then resize it there, and then you can draw it out. Now, how precise you are is how precise you want to be. Okay, but it's understanding. When you've drawn those, you have that 4 line to start breaking down the pattern. Then you see the elements that are on those lines. Then you know how you can replicate, how you can resize and redraw. But this is where you could do it to redraw it, or if you're doing a mosaic from it, if you're using a lot of standard machine cut tesserae, which a lot of people are, then you need the pattern to be pretty good. You need the pattern to be pretty precise there. So that's when you do that. And there are certain things that you can do to maintain that, to make sure that your patterns are the correct size for using the machine cut tesserae, without having to go too heavy into learning the geometry. So let's go on to the third one. Bring that up. Okay. So you can identify the pattern. You can understand it. You can redraw it using geometry, or this is where you can skip that second one. You can create the mosaic using the pattern. Now, remember, there is a distinction between pattern and, here we are, pattern and mosaic. So third one, talking about creating the mosaic using the pattern. So if you look at this one here, Solomon's knot, get the damn thing in focus. There, what's a Solomon's knot? Solomon's knot is it's not a knot, it's 2 chain links together. So you can see that is the pattern. The geometry is 4 circles there. You can see on each of those curves, that's the geometry, but the pattern is the 4 chain links. And that is what you do your mosaic from. Now, if this works if you're using, generally speaking, if you're using tesserae that are hand cut, therefore you have a slightly irregular profile. So the excuse me, the mosaics are, the tesserae are all the same average size. So you could have 10 mil, 3/8 of an inch tesserae, and then you can have sort of the actual sides could be 8 to 12 mil on any of the sides, and they'll be slightly irregular. So if you're making the mosaic using those, you can make it without drawing out the pattern underneath. Now, you can do this with a second one as well, where you understand the geometry, but you're using machine cut mosaics, machine cut tesserae. Then you can use that, and you can draw your pattern out and use your machine cut on there. Or if you don't want to draw it out, you can still do that. You just need to be a bit more precise. This is a whole thing. With the tesserae, if you've got machine cut stuff, you have to be more precise on your pattern. But if you've got the irregular one, then it really works well if you've got the hand cut stuff to actually do these mosaics without drawing down the pattern underneath. And this is doing the mosaic without having the pattern to follow. So I will be back on at 5 p.m. GMT this afternoon. I can't remember what that is, EST. It's written down on there. I will be going over the same. We'll have a bit more graphics, a bit more detail. Now, if you'd like the chance to win the first copy of the new manual on the identifying patterns, the identifying guide, then all I want you to do is just put a comment down about what thing you'd really what you'd really want to know about geometric patterns, or what is, if there's one thing that concerns you, like learning the geometry, like getting the right size tesserae for it, anything specific to patterns, geometric patterns in a mosaic, anything that concerns you, just one thing, just put that down in the comments. I'll read it. Your name will be written down on a piece of paper. It'll go in a hat, if I can find a hat. And then I'll pick that out, and there'll be two, one for here, one for YouTube, to get the first copy of the mosaics, which is going, the booklet, which is going out on Monday. Okay, so tune in again this afternoon, 5 p.m. GMT. The details will still be up for that, and then we'll be repeating this. I'm just going over a little bit more in depth. So just remember, 4 lines on a piece of tracing paper, vertical, horizontal, 2 diagonal lines, and then start placing that on the patterns and start seeing how they actually break down. Okay. Any questions, let me know, and thanks very much for staying around to watch. Cheers.